Second Lieutenant, you were on your arm.
That's right. Oh my God, we were waiting. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's a shot. Ladies and gentlemen, if I ask you to take your seats, please. And just to begin our ceremonies, I would ask the Ambassador of Ukraine to step forward. He has a short presentation to make.
Дякую, пане президенте. Дорога громада, Honorable Minister Sajjan, Boris has kindly invited me to make a very sweet and short ceremonial thing in your presence and before you speak. And now I understand why, because when you recently hosted the visit of the Ukrainian Defense Minister Poltorak, I remember that both you and him spoke so highly of the Ukrainian Canadian community in this country. And we still have one unfinished business from that visit, and it's about one extraordinary individual from the Ukrainian Canadian community. So I would invite Colonel Viktor Soromacha, the Ukrainian military attaché, to join us. And in his hands you can see a very special award from the Ukrainian Minister of Defense, from Minister Poltorak. And it's meant to be given to a very special person whose name is well known to everyone in this room, and his name is Yaroslav Baran.
Oh, you're joking.
So many people in this room deserve the highest words about what you have been doing to help Ukraine. And I know that in a minute, Minister Sajjan will tell about this wonderful partnership which we have been building between men and women in uniforms, men and women from Canada and Ukraine. If we think about the Operation Unifier, about the Defense Cooperation Arrangement, about the upcoming Invictus Games, I think many wonderful things are going to happen between us, and it's really a sign of this very new partnership, brotherhood in arms between our men and women. It's efficient, it's strong, it's mature, it's something extraordinary. But we know that this would not probably happen without extraordinary support from the Ukrainian Canadian community. So I would like to give this award on behalf of the Ukrainian government and on behalf of the Ukrainian Minister of Defense to Yaroslav. We all know how much he has contributed into what we talk about today. When Yaroslav, please be aware that this is well known not just here in Ottawa, it's well known across Canada, and I know it's well known in Ukraine. So I would like to thank you, and I would like to thank everyone in this room for what you have been doing to help Ukraine in this very difficult time. Thank you so much. You have been doing. No, thank you very much. Can we have each all together? Yeah. Minister, it's a very special moment because we have the outgoing and incoming president of UCC in Ottawa in one place. That's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good.
I have both the duty and the pleasure of introducing our Minister of Defense. I think his history is quite well known, but like any good Ukrainian, I'm going to stand up here and repeat it to all of you. Minister Sajjan, like some of us, and like most of our parents, is actually an immigrant to Canada from India. His father had been a chief constable in the police service in the Punjab, came to Canada, and I would suppose because of his family history, was interested in a career in the Canadian Police Service. He joined the Vancouver Police. And in the Vancouver Police, he earned a sterling reputation as both a constable and a member of, I believe it was the gangs unit in the Vancouver Police. But at the same time, he joined the militia, right, the Army Reserve, the British Columbia Regiment in Vancouver. And as a member of that regiment, he served in Bosnia in the early 1990s, went back to his civilian career as a police constable. Then, in the early 2000s, he became the first Canadian Sikh commanding officer of a Canadian regiment, his home regiment, the British Columbia Regiment. From there, he served in Afghanistan. And that's where he first became widely known. Because in Afghanistan, he was the G2, or the Chief Intelligence Officer for Area South. There, he reorganized the collection of intelligence around the idea of actionable information. In other words, it's not just enough to gather facts on little file cards or in computers. You have to organize it in such a way, and you have to gather it in such a way that it's immediately useful to the operators or the fighting units. He did this so successfully that his system of intelligence gathering became the basis for Operation Medusa. And as the General Officer Commanding, Brigadier General Fraser, said, his work was nothing short of brilliant and led to the eventual success of that operation. In 2015, he left the rather puzzling and Disneylandish world of national defense and leaped into another Disneyland, politics, becoming the Member of Parliament for Vancouver South and very quickly the Minister of National Defense. As Minister of National Defense, he was part of a triumvirate that included the Minister of Foreign Affairs, and we all know her, himself, and the Minister that dealt with foreign aid. They revised Canadian foreign and defense policy and aid policy into a single, well-connected system. A system that is now planned to be well-funded, expensively, but well-funded for the next 20 years. And based on something that in Canadian politics has been around since the 1940s, the fact that Canada depends on the North Atlantic nexus for its success, economic, social, and political. Now, this North Atlantic nexus, NATO, and including the EU and other organizations, is key to the survival of Canada. The one element in this policy, which was one might consider common sense from our point of view, is that Ukraine, on the far eastern flank of this North Atlantic nexus, is key to the security of the rest of Europe, and therefore to the security and welfare of Canada as a whole. Now, this might seem like common sense to everybody here in this community, but in politics and in the military, that's not always well understood. Minister Sajjan takes his idea of common sense, and we know exactly where it comes from. In 1993, Second Lieutenant Sajjan attended the armor qualifying course to become a troop leader in Wainwright, Alberta. Like all of us, he would go into the officers' mess bar. And on top of that bar, over the bar, was a sign that said, "There is nothing so uncommon as common sense." So, I would now turn the microphone over to Minister Sajjan to give us a good dollop of his common sense. Thank you.
My wife may disagree with that whole common sense piece of it, but ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for giving me this privilege to come to talk with all of you. I really appreciate the kind introduction. Like any work that I did, I know there's a lot of, obviously in the last month or some talk about Medusa. I'm very proud of the service that I did. Unfortunately, in politics, there's a lot more interesting scrutiny that goes around, and I use my policing experience that had the impact for us on the ground. And for one reason, all of us who have served, our job is to, when you feel that your skills are needed, offer it up, volunteer, right? And that's what we do, and that's what I had the opportunity to do, and I was just very proud to wear the uniform. This corporal who's wearing it right now, to be able to serve alongside with some phenomenal, extraordinary Canadians and have an impact in this world that every single one of you are proud of, because their story has not been told fully yet, and one day it will be. And every Canadian and people around the world would be so thrilled to hear, because it's a story of tenacity, it's a story of common sense, It's a story of showing action and getting things done. And that's what I'm here to talk to you about today. I think all of you know me and know as the Prime Minister, our steadfast support for Ukraine. And this is, there's a lot of diplomacy that has to be done in words, but you also need to be able to show it in action as well. It's only through action sometimes other nations are actually going to take your words seriously. So you need to back it up with actions. That's one of the things that our Prime Minister and our government believes in. Obviously, we have full all party support for what we're doing in Ukraine, but that's not enough, right? That's the work there, but we need to be able to look at everything else. So our work with NATO is absolutely crucial. And so the reason why, even before the defense policy was complete, we took that leadership role in NATO as well by becoming one of the leading framework nations to take a leadership role in Latvia. All for one reason, to send a message to Russia that the illegal annexation of Crimea, what they're doing in the Donbass area in Georgia, is completely unacceptable, and we're not going to take it. And this is one of the reasons why Canada wanted to step up and take this leadership role. So we have now about 450 Canadians who are leading a multinational battle group in Latvia. I was just in Latvia at their ceremony with the Secretary General of NATO, the President of Latvia, and the Minister of Defense from Latvia. And the reason why am I mentioning this is because don't just look at what we're trying to do in the Ukraine for support. That's the direct support, and we will always be there, and we'll continue to evolve with our relationship. And I was actually just talking to Minister Freeland just today. There's a few other things now. The next steps after the Defense Cooperation Agreement, what do we need to do to further that relationship? And it's actually her responsibility now for the next steps of that relationship. We're going to work together towards that. But we can't stop there. We have to look at making sure that Russia gets this message. So that's one of the reasons why I can't stress enough, like, our leadership in NATO is a very big deal. We haven't done this in a very long time, and we have the most diverse battle group that we're commanding, and it is sending a message to Russia. We have air policing that's going into, it's actually just finished in Iceland. We'll be going to Romania as well. We have a frigate there as well. And everything that we're trying to do is to back our words up with action. And that's the only message that Russia is going to understand, is to bring it back to dialogue so we can actually start de-escalating. And that's the ultimate goal, to making sure that the people of Ukraine can get back to their lives, their choice of what they want to do, and not allow another nation to be able to become a bully and to do what they're doing. So that's one of the reasons why, what we're doing. But I just want to go back to the relationship. This is not just about our relationship now of our men and women in uniform, with His Excellency providing some great words. Our relationship was built even much before, and it's built with the community. When the people from Ukraine settled here in Canada, that's when the relationship started, and a relationship fosters. And as Ukrainian Canadians, you have a direct concern for countries, like other people have direct concerns. And it's our responsibility to making sure that we as a government not only demonstrate our actions against aggression, but at the same time also be able to communicate directly back to you, to demonstrate and explain to you, to give you confidence of what we're doing, and also answer your questions as well. So we look forward to continue that work. You know how strong and powerful Minister Freeland is, and I'm just so blessed to be able to work with such a powerful person with so much energy, and we complement each other in such great ways. And we're going to bring up new approaches, and I can't tell you about all the conversations that we have for various reasons, but I can assure you, she is. I'll share one with you. We had a dinner with Secretary Tillerson, Secretary Mattis, myself, and Mr. Freeland. So, doing a whole of government approach. Instead of just us meeting directly, we're kind of talking things together. And Secretary Tillerson, I can't tell you exactly what was said, but during a meeting with the foreign minister from Russia, all I got was when Secretary Tillerson turned to Minister Freeland and said, "Wow, you really put him in his place, right?" And but that's how strong she is, right? But point being is, we are invested in this as Canadians, all this together. We might be the government representatives, but we're also Canadians, and we're in this together. And we look forward to making sure that we continue that support. But the support that we're providing, I also know as Minister of National Defence, we need to sustain it. And the only way to sustain it is making sure that Canadian Armed Forces are actually well-resourced. And that's what the new defence policy does now. This is making sure that the Canadian Armed Forces, that, to be very frank, it was hollow. This is actually going to provide a new investment in Canadian Armed Forces so that we'll be able to have a force that is capable of sustaining itself for all these operations of what we're asking our men and women to do. This defense policy with over $62 billion over the next 20 years in new investment. Within the 10 years, we're going to have a over 70% increase. And with all this dollars that you hear about, with all the planes that you hear that we're buying or ships, think about one thing. All these capabilities, all these dollars are all going to our number one capability, and that's our men and women in uniform who are actually there to do this great work. And they're doing phenomenal work in Ukraine, and I look forward to going back and visiting them to see the progress that they're making. Actually, he's a good friend of mine who's actually the commanding officer there in Ukraine, and I got to serve with him. Mark Lubanecki is his name, CEO of the Stratconas, and I know he's doing wonderful work. So on that note, I just wanted to be able to give you the confidence directly that you have now Canada's defence policy that will be able to sustain our Canadian Armed Forces commitment and with engagement in the world to making sure that Canada plays a credible role in sending a very strong message to the Russian aggression, and also trying to bring peace and stability in other parts of the world as well. So thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Minister. I wonder if you would indulge me in kicking the conversation off with a couple of questions. First of all, congratulations on a once-in-a-generation defense policy review. I think it was overdue. I also think it's fair to say it was very well received. And according to all the accolades you've been receiving, I think you'll allow us to echo the congratulations you've been receiving from most quarters. You mentioned Latvia, and this is a very timely discussion. This week we saw the deployment to Latvia, and this is a significant event. It's a significant moment, and a significant deployment for Canada. Now, I'll ask you a question. I had a very similar conversation today, actually, with General Grauve from Latvia. The Latvians, of course, are over the moon at the presence of NATO boots on the ground, and their view is that this will be a very real deterrent for them who share a border with an aggressor. Although he himself mentioned that this is only one front, that what started as little green men 3 years ago has evolved, and those little green men don't necessarily carry Kalashnikovs anymore. They are re-emerging through blogs, through an info war, through cyber attacks, through attempts to manipulate elections in, name your country, France, Italy, Austria, United States, the list goes on. That is the new front. So in one sense, yes, it's a remarkable deployment, but we're fighting the battle 3 years ago. Not to say it's not necessary. What needs to be done in your view for Canada, for NATO, elsewhere, to catch up to the new fronts, the modern fronts, where the little green men are now emerging in different formats?
So, actually, one bit, you make an excellent point here is we want to be fighting the last war, right? We need to be focused on the new challenges that we have. So we took this into account. We actually had, in the Canadian Armed Forces, a tremendous experience of understanding some of these challenges. What you see in cyber is just a new tool. We were seeing some of these things of misinformation, creating strife between communities, in other smaller forms, especially in Afghanistan. We saw a little bit in Bosnia. So we knew that we needed to change. We needed to change our ways of how we manage things. So, for example, we know that cyber is important. How do we look at these things? So in Latvia, there's actually a center of excellence that's looking at a cyber center that's looking at these things. But what are we doing in the Canadian Armed Forces? So one is with the defense policy review that we conducted. Now we have Canadian Armed Forces have the authorities to do more. We're creating a cyber force. We already have some cyber capabilities. And also, with, as Minister of National Defense, I'm also responsible for the Communications Security Establishment, which is another premier security agency that we have. And we have our cyber expertise in there. And so with them, now with the new security regulation, which gets the right, making sure that Canadians' privacy is protected, but also keep evolving with the new threats, so we can actually use our tremendous talent and our capabilities. So now the CSC will actually have the ability to assist the Canadian Armed Forces with dealing with these type of issues.
And that's the bill that was tabled yesterday.
Exactly. So this also gives additional authorities for that. But keep in mind, all these things are tools. It takes people to be able to execute it. I'm very proud to say that in the Canadian Armed Forces and within CSC, we have the unique people to be able to understand those type of issues. Because there's one thing of seeing it, what do you do with it? And that's now the key. So we focus, first of all, is all our members, making sure that they fully understood what the challenges were within this space. We also now working with Minister Gold about the democratic institution. And guess what? All of you are part of this. Because when you see something that's fake or in the fake news or you see blogs that are coming out, or especially in social media, it's up to you when you say, no, this is wrong, right? Because how the system works is, all it takes is somebody to create misinformation, right? Push it out there. And here's the interesting thing about social media. It doesn't matter if it's true or not. People believe it. It depends on who shares it. If somebody is seen and somebody shares it, and it's a friend, of course you're going to believe it, right? So it's important for us to be able to scrutinize this stuff, and then on social media, to making sure that we push back, saying, no, that's not the case. Create that doubt. And so you need to be part of that. Our media needs to be part of that, so that they need to do their fact checking before they push this stuff. So we're starting those conversations. We've given the tools to our Canadian Armed Forces members. They're well trained to deal with some of these things. But now we have even greater work to do, which we didn't think we needed to do before. Where we're literally our communities and even our media need to be part of the solution, because no media wants to be given fake stories are being used as a tool. Their independence and their freedom is part of our democracy. And so they don't want to be doing that either. And so we need to educate everybody about that.
Thanks. And it sounds like there's a dose of smart consumer savviness that's part of this as well, educating the public on how to discern legit news from fake news. So I'd be curious to see how that evolves going forward. But if I could switch gears slightly. Canada has recently renewed its commitment to the training mission in Western Ukraine. This is a highly celebrated mission among our community, and I think among the general Canadian community, that this is a very tangible contribution that Canada is making. Now, most of the dialogue, most of the discussions has been focusing on what Ukraine is learning from Canadian trainers, but what have we learned? What do you hear from the Canadian forces? Have there been any interesting lessons from you? What have you learned from the Ukrainians?
I mean, any opportunity. In fact, actually, when I visited the last time, our troops are getting tremendous experience. So, for example, we just one aspect, even from a personal perspective. We don't, we normally worked with NATO type of equipment, and now normally we hadn't seen or worked with equipment that Russia or other nations that our adversaries potentially might use. Being able to see some of that equipment and work with some of the tactics, you're able to learn yourself of what those tactics are. And what does the military do? It's not about going out and looking for work. It's about preparation, training. And any knowledge is important in that. So even though the training that we're doing, capacity building that our members are doing there, they're also learning at the same time. And when it comes to shooting all those things, so the soldiers can do that, right? They have a lot of fun, they enjoy themselves in hard training. But one thing I took away was there was a need for training for medics. What they found was on the front line, to save lives, the Ukrainian soldiers didn't have the training or the equipment, just simple things like first aid kits to be able to have on them. So without, no need for permission, they set up a course, expedient course to teach on combat, casualty collection points, the first aid, but combat first aid, doing it in a high threat environment. And so they taught how to do the first aid, but they did it in a high threat environment. Just one example, the reason I want to mention how important that is, when you get hit, and even from our, first thing you want to do is go help your friend, right? But that's what you don't want to do that. First thing you want to do if you're hit, get security up. Okay? Get security up, protect yourself. And then, so when they were doing that, putting all these pieces together, they were learning from each other's experience. So they're learning from the front line to what's actually happening and putting that onto the course. And when I saw the Ukrainian soldiers actually going through that, you can just see the heart and dedication of what they're putting into their training. They weren't just doing it to impress us or the Ukrainian Minister of Defense. It was about, they're doing it because they're training, because their lives are going to depend on it. And our soldiers are very proud of that fact that when you provide that training, you're helping the fellow soldier keep themselves alive and keep their soldiers alive as well. So that's another aspect. And one of the things I want to pass on is the IED, counter IED training. I was very impressed with the level of sophistication that the setup that the Ukrainian troops already had there. And our folks were able to complement to that, and so it was another opportunity to learn. Like I said, ranges, shooting, all that stuff, that's it's almost standard, but with those specialities, that was really kind of caught my eye.
How close or far are we from NATO interoperability between Ukraine and Canada plus the rest of NATO from what you see?
From my briefings from military commanders and what I've seen, there's more work needs to be done. The capacity building that we're doing is still at the lower levels, and we need to eventually get to a higher level of training. And not only higher level, not a high standard, but for example, we need to get up to brigade level, higher formations. And that training, you can train for combat, but what's probably the most important thing is you need to understand the logistics system. And I guess within the Russian system, you really didn't have those systems before. So that's what we need to do is move up to that level. And that's why we're focusing on the capacity building training. Jill Sinclair, our Canadian representative, who's working with the Minister of Defense in their offices, with the other counterparts as well, they're focusing on the wider changes. And so our goal is, as time goes on, is to be able to adjust the training to be able to kind of professionalize it, the force for the logistics side. Because the logistics is extremely important. And General Vance will, Chief of Defense Staff, will kind of gauge where they're at and what adjustments we need to make. But I'm hopeful we can move into that direction. But I'm also, what I'd like to see is more police trainers. Professionalizing the police is very important, because that's one thing I saw. I saw some great professional police officers with a lot of passion to serve, and it was actually very thrilling to see. I met a retired RCMP officer who was so impressed with that. And he goes, "This is one thing that we can actually potentially do more, and we're going to look at those options as well."
Yeah, the police reform, I think, has been actually turned into a bit of a PR campaign by the Ukrainians. I think Kyiv and Odessa were the pilots, where they recruited young, slick, well-equipped, good-looking, recruits, and really turned things around. So yeah, that's a good point. Last question from me. I'd like to get some questions in from the crowd as well. RadarSat. There's a bit of a debate about the relevance and effectiveness of Canada sharing images. So why the policy change there?
When we came in there, we all, to be honest, we have to be mindful of how the information is also used. And I think when it comes to the training, we'll all be able to provide what the tools are necessary. We have to make sure that what we end up provides the added value. And I've always taken the advice of our officials on the ground who can give the advice. And the advice that was given was, this is an area that Even though to us sometimes it may seem like, hey, let's put this resource there, it can have an impact, we have to rely on our officials, and I gotta be able to trust those, our officials on the ground, and foreign affairs, obviously, their folks as well. And a recommendation was made that it was not needed, and we needed to focus. Our goal always will be to make sure that we provide the right support. Hence one of the reasons why I wanted to move very quickly on the Defense Cooperation Agreement. And it wasn't actually a slowdown from our side. It was actually slowed down on the Ukrainian side at that time. And I was just waiting. And now, once we got that done, what that allows us to do is send a message to Russia that even with all the things that they're trying to do, they're not going to hold Ukraine down. Is to get the nation back onto its feet. So instead of doing what we do in Afghanistan, providing this, providing that, no, Ukraine is not about needy assistance. They can get on their own feet. So let's create the mechanisms in place to allow them to do that. Defense Cooperation Agreement was the first step towards that, and we'll move further on it. And I'll give you an example. One of the things that when I was there, I heard that a Canadian company was looking at, was going to come down into the West because Canada was there, considered safe, because such great professional people there, they were looking at opening up a factory, right? So my thing is, what we're also doing is, yes, we're on the front line, but you need to send a message to Russia that at the same time, our people are going to succeed regardless of what you do. So having, the economy that grows, the military that's able to build things on their own, that's what we want to achieve as we're providing that direct assistance. And I think, you know Ukraine far better than I do. It's extremely impressive. It's hard to tell that there's actually this type of struggle that's going on, and but we need to be able to continue on with that. Hence why the free trade agreement was so important as well.
Any questions from the floor? Boris?
Quick one, Minister. You spoke of information warfare and digital warfare. What DND is doing in protection of civil society. Yet the targets of both of those forms of warfare are really civil government, civil society, industry, and the community. You just touched on that. Can you explain what Canada is doing as a whole of government approach and how we're working with NATO and even the EU to really fight this rather sophisticated and little understood type of warfare?
So I mean, this type of warfare, they're trying to do the opposite of what I just mentioned. Is trying to create a way that your economy is going down, or trying to create division amongst people. So our message is quite the opposite. And guess what? Ukraine is going to succeed, or Latvia is going to succeed, or the other nations are going to succeed, regardless of what you try to do. So that's one of the reasons why it's not just a military approach. It's and we don't want to say development, because these nations, Ukraine and other nations, are not third world countries, right? This is about helping institutions even grow and making better, help industry grow. The other thing I'd like to say is, keep in mind, our visits, when we go there at a certain time or say something, is also tied into that. There's a reason why I went to Latvia only for a day and a half. My presence, I wanted to make sure that in our speeches that we made, that was a direct message, not just to Latvia. It was a message to people in Ukraine. It was a direct message to the Russians as well, that we take this very seriously. The Minister of Defense from Canada, Secretary General from NATO, President of Latvia, Minister of Defense from Latvia, plus all the chiefs of defense staffs from all those nations of the battle group. We're all here, and we're sending a consistent message. And that's the whole piece, that you might try to divide us, but we're showing that unity, and we're showing that direct support. And the best thing is, when we're training together, showing interoperability, doing all these things, and not allowing some fake news to be kind of pushed out. For example, even, believe it or not, the stuff around me that happened, they'd love to be able to see me with negative news. So for example, there was apparently a story out in Latvia, because he wears a turban, he's a Muslim. One. Yes, I wear a turban, right? No, I'm not a Muslim, but at the same time, yeah, if I was, who cares? Guess what? I wear a Canadian uniform, and without getting shittier, I can at least say is I worked in places like Afghanistan, and I know the areas that the Russians couldn't penetrate, Canadian troops did, right? So we can be proud of that fact. So they're going to always try to do these things, right? So we're going to, at the same time, making sure that we take this seriously. Like members say, it's not about just our words. It's about taking that direct action, so that we personally giving, as leaders, giving that direct confidence to the people of the nation. Let them see us. So when they try to push out these messages that we're a turban and Muslim, when they hear me speak, they're like, hey, you got really good English, right? Oh, yes, good, right? Yeah, thanks very much for that. But the point is, right, that's what we want to demonstrate. And in Canada, what a powerful thing. What are we trying to do here? Our battle group is multinational. In Canada, we represent the world, right? And to say that, for example, I'm proud of the fact, when I talk about the Ukraine, why is Ukraine important? Because we have people from Ukraine who make Canada their home. It's important to us, right? I might be from India. I'm a Canadian. It's important to you. Guess what? It's important to me, because we're all in this together. And so when you see somebody like me standing up for Latvia, for the Ukraine, right? What message that it sends, right? I think yes, yeah, we're a turban, and guess what? I'm very proud of that fact. And if I was still in uniform, I'd be volunteering to go on these missions, right? Now I get to be the Minister of Defense and supporting our Canadian Armed Forces to be able to do these things. So these are the type of messages we want to be able to send. While our Canadian Armed Forces, the best thing for them is to keep training, have interoperability, do all these things, and no news is good news for them. While we sending that message to everybody else, saying, when you have Italy there, Spain there, Albania there, the Czech Republic is going to be coming on board, right? What a powerful message that it sends to any little battle group. We're a speed bump from the tactical side of things, as you know. But guess what? That's what NATO is about. And everywhere I go, when I talk about NATO, when I go to NATO, I always have a meeting with all the partners who are in Ukraine as well, with Quinn. And that's how seriously we take this.
Thanks, Minister. We had a question in the back.
You partly answered my question that I had when I was coming here in your introduction speech. We actually, Canada and Ukraine share a lot. We have a lot in common, and specifically the border that we share. Ukraine has, and the reason Ukraine has a war today and people are suffering, more than 2 million people displaced, and more than 10,000 people killed because of the bad neighbor. And we all know that Mr. Putin is not well because he denies existence of Ukrainians, and he speaks publicly that Ukrainians do not have right to exist because they're supposed to be Russians. He has an issue with the history and common history and his misinterpretation of the world. But speaking of common sense of sharing the border and applying the Ukrainian wisdom into this situation, Ukrainian proverb says, the appetite comes while somebody is eating. So since that man is not well and he is denying existence of people and he is destroying so many lives now with the war, wouldn't you see they apply your common sense into it that his appetite would not stop in Ukraine only, and Canadian border and Arctic would be the next issue if Canada would allow this to happen and continue with the war? Don't you think that, yes, we appreciate what Canada does, but don't you think it's not enough just expressing the concerns on political level or providing only the training, and should the Canada at least support Ukraine with the weapon and have this stop as soon as possible to stop the death and destruction of innocent people?
You make an extremely good point regarding the passion that you have. You see the suffering that's going on, and that's that direct connection that you have. But also, I can tell you from personal experience, the goal is always to making sure that we do not escalate the situation. We don't want to create any more greater suffering. So we need to be mindful that decisions that are made are the ones that actually de-escalate and try to reduce the conflict and try to bring some peace. We don't want to escalate things either. It's sometimes easy to say, let's put more troops into this, or let's go arm, or we have to do those calculations. That actually, we need to look at it as from the military leadership side, it could potentially make things situation worse. We don't want more suffering. What we want is Russians to actually leave Ukraine alone. And so we need to be very mindful of this. And I completely understand your passion regarding this. And this is not about being timid in any way. This is about being smart. This is about sending a proper message. And sir, the only way to do this is to making sure that we look at all the various factors, use the experience of the Canadian Armed Forces, use the experience of our diplomatic corps, talk to our allies, work with our allies on this, We don't make decisions alone, especially when it comes to big things like this. Our number one goal is to making sure that we reduce the conflict for the number one reason, for the Ukrainian people. What we don't want to do is allow a situation to make a split-second decision and actually escalate the situation and cause greater death and suffering and more displacement. We don't want to do that, and so we want to be mindful of the direction that we always go. It's going to go in the direction that's benefit of the Ukrainian people. So a lot of work is being done, and we always need to give every opportunity to allow diplomacy to work, because at the same time, keep in mind, it's our men and women in uniform, whether it's with a Ukrainian uniform or a Canadian uniform or any other nation's uniform. Making that decision to send them into harm's way is a very difficult one. I can just imagine the weight that the leadership in Ukraine, that they have on themselves every single time of having to read the reports and the actions that are going on. It's not easy. And so we need to be able to assist and make decisions and do things to help stabilize and decrease the conflict. And that's what this is about. And in terms of Mr. Putin, what the intentions and stuff, I mean, as a minister of the government, I've always choose my words very carefully and in a professional manner, because we with nations always have to maintain a proper dialogue. I don't know the exact to say what's in his mind for the reasons for doing things. All I know is this is not a way that nations express their viewpoint. This is about that we have a rules-based order and things and how we thought that we were going in a certain direction. I mean, I was commanding officer of my unit, and I actually led a Russian contingent on parade on a Remembrance Day once. So we thought we were moving in a different direction. Little do we know, you have the Olympics in Sochi, and then the illegal annexation of Crimea, right? That is not what responsible nations do, and that's what our actions are about now. No nation wants to spend more money and send troops into harm's way. Our troops that are in Latvia are, yes, they're there to train, but it's a fully combat capable battle group though, right? So it's not easy for us to even send our troops into harm's way, but it's our responsibility as a government, and every government, to making sure that we look after options that's going to reduce that conflict, and we'll always continue to do that. But at the same time, we as a government made that decision to send troops to Latvia as well. And it's never an easy decision to make. It was a very bold decision, and that to lead a battle group, a multinational battle group there, right next to the Russian border. And we did that because we completely want to send a strong message to Russia that Canada will not accept these type of things. We're not going to just talk about it diplomatically. We're going to show leadership within NATO and send a message with our actions, and that's exactly what we're doing in Latvia as well, alongside Ukraine.
Oksana.
Mr. Minister, congratulations and thank you for Canada's strong and very balanced voice in the world for Ukraine. Having said that, however, there are very strong, like-minded countries that are saying Ukraine in NATO, no way. And yet, on the other side, it's either Ukraine with the West, sir, or it's Ukraine with NATO. And even though it is smart to keep our people away from harm's way and not put boots on the ground, we may be waiting for something that may be even more catastrophic. What I would like to hear, if I may, is what suasion is Canada using with like-minded countries, with our friends, to convince them that Ukraine in NATO is a positive, forward-looking step, given that some other countries, well, all of the same problems that we are now saying Ukraine has, ranging from corruption, being a neighbor to, have managed to overcome.
Thank you. Andy, you raised an extremely good point, and I think the point here is you let a nation decide what they want to do, right? And the people of that nation to make their own choice, whether they want to, where they want their economic ties, if they want to go through the process of becoming a member of NATO. Like I said, there's no meeting that I attend when it comes to NATO that we don't talk about the Ukraine. So you have like-minded nations. And we do talk about the challenges within with the Ukraine as well, which is, and I've been also very, direct about this. We need to tackle some of the corruption that's within the country, because otherwise countries like Russia are going to try to use these little things of spreading that disinformation and divide people. So we all need to be able to work together in making sure that the nation itself is successful, so the people of Ukraine can make their own decision of the direction they want to take their country, and we will help with that. Obviously, we in Canada support Ukraine in the direction that they want to go, and we'll always be there for them.
I think we'll maybe share with this side of the room. Any questions from? No? All right. Well, back to the talkative side.
Thank you. Mr. Minister, thank you very much for coming. I have family who is served with the training mission in Ukraine. Candidly, the Ukrainians have one question. When is the West going to help them to push the Russians out of eastern Ukraine and retake Crimea? It's well good enough to have this training program, and it's good. That stops them. But for them, they look at Putin, at Hitler and Stalin, who seized land, and they look at the West like Western Europe, Canada, and the United States in the 1930s. That's the way they look at things. When will Canada and the West be able to push Putin out of eastern Ukraine and Crimea?
Sir, I completely understand your passion. By the way, I love your shirt there.
Thank you very much.
I'm a Trekkie myself over Star Wars.
By the way, sir, your turban and your tie are a perfect match.
Oh, really? Thank you, sir. My wife has to take credit for that. But we have to be very, some certain things are easy to say. So imagine the other steps if certain decisions were taken very quickly and you do this. What if all of a sudden escalation occurs and then what you're looking at here is full-scale potential escalation into a conflict that nations may be able to turn back from. We have to allow all other options to be explored, to making sure that we have the opportunity. Because when you take any decisions, for example, of what you're suggesting, we may be able to go down a path. It may not achieve the outcome of exactly what we want immediately there. And I hate, we're literally talking about it, but if it goes in a certain direction, you're looking at an all-scale war, and we know what the horrors of war, what the direction that it may go. And so I completely understand your passion, sir, but we have to allow, it's our responsibility to making sure that we use every avenue possible to make sure that we de-escalate.
Well, I was a former serving officer in the infantry in the 70s. I was trained to fight that war. Maybe we should have that war now before it gets any worse.
Exactly.
I completely understand, sir, and I've been in combat, and our soldiers will go wherever our government sends them. And having said that, I've now personally witnessed the bravery and the tenacity. But we also have a responsibility as a nation to making sure that we de-escalate, because you only if you ever go into one battle once and you never want to be back there again. Even though we've gone multiple times to do it, this is a decision. We have to be very mindful of how we make it, and we have to allow every other opportunity to de-escalate a situation, to making sure that to allow Ukraine to be successful. Full-out combat will not allow.
Sir, just one point.
Sorry.
I'd just like to know, we have a Victoria Cross winner in the corner who was a parishioner here. He dealt with the enemy with cold steel.
Well, if I could maybe rephrase that question slightly and take the tactics out of it. 3 years ago, all the talk was, we will not eliminate sanctions, we will not reduce sanctions until we achieve status quo ante. Now, and this is a genuine question, has the discussion moved to containment? I mean, yes, the forward battle groups in the Baltics is fantastic as deterrence against further aggression. But what about undoing the land grabs that have already happened? Or is that yesterday's conversation, or is that conversation still being had?
No, in fact, the conversations are being had. There's a lot of, just because what we're doing in Latvia as part of the deterrence, there's a lot of other work that's also being done. Minister Freeland, as the Minister of Foreign Affairs, has had many conversations. There's a lot of work that's being done behind the scenes to achieve the aim that we want. And we want to be able to do it in a peaceful manner. Because, sir, I mean, all the gallantry of Victoria Cross, we do need to remember the losses during when the Victoria Crosses won, what the losses were around those times, and we don't want to be in a situation like that. We want to be able to bring peace, and our fallen bravery demonstrated that yes, they can do this, but it's also they expect the leadership from all their nations to find every other recourse possible before force is ever used in that type of manner.
Thanks. This young lady in the Vishamanka.
Thank you so much. Mr. Minister, I have this kind request, if I may, on behalf of Ukrainians that I know here in Ottawa. Could you please be a voice for us so that Canadians know more about current events in Ukraine? Lately, I have not seen a lot on the news about what's going on there. And unfortunately, every day when I receive bulletins from the front line, what's going on in terms of war and losses, it breaks my heart. I just want to know that Canadians are aware of the current events in Ukraine. Can you be our voice?
Ma'am, actually on the case I actually am. When I talk about conflict in the world, when I have general conversations, so for example, the voice, we're there, it's up to the media to pick it up, right? We can't tell them what to do. When I talk about being that for example, that voice, I always talk about in our defense policy, what we are doing. I talk about Canada will be there to fight the direct threat, immediate threat, ISIS, right? And we're fighting them. Why did we take a leadership role in NATO? Why are we in Ukraine? Because we need to do what NATO was created also for, is to deal with the illegal annexation of Crimea, what the Russians are also doing to Donbass. I bring that up. So that's the maintenance of that threat, the immediate term. But then I talk about the long term. Why United Nations is also important. How we need to reduce conflict in their areas. I talk about this almost everywhere I go as a Minister of National Defense when I have the opportunity, man. I wish it was demonstrated. In fact, to me, this is important. I make it also a strong point. People ask the question, well, why is Canada involved? I said, we represent in Canada, Ukraine. Simple as that. So it matters to Canadians because that's where their families are from. That's where their roots are from. And Canadians, my parents, for example, we still have a house in India. They look at those issues, but keep in mind, they understand the other issues as well, what's happening. They feel that, oh my God, people from Ukraine are also feeling like what's happening in their homeland. Because other nations have other situations as well. So you're absolutely right, we do take that voice, and not only myself, Minister Freeland, Prime Minister directly, we bring this up in every opportunity. And that's one of the reasons, for example, I went to Latvia. I literally fly there to go send that message, to give a speech. That's what I was there for. Because I don't want to be there, because if I don't go there, we're not having the same strong message. Also, and I just spoke with Minister Freeland just today about how we're talking about Ukraine. How are we going to plan our visit so that we're going to send a direct message? It's not just about visiting the troops, coming to show the confidence in the Ukrainian people. What are we doing? How are we going to do it? So those are the things that we take it very seriously, man. And we not only need to educate, by the way, Canadians, I do this everywhere I go, and internationally as well.
Thank you.
And final question goes to Maria, but before you ask your question, let me thank you on behalf of all of us, you and the Ukrainian Catholic Women's League, for doing the heavy lifting and setting up for tonight. So thank you. Your question, Maria.
The community here and the boys that I communicate with in Ukraine, they don't want soldiers from Canada over there. They don't want the soldiers going to Ukraine. All they want is the arms, that they're capable and they're able to fight. They need the arms.
So, man, when it comes to the support, we work with, and what we can easily simplify to say we need the arms, right? We also need to look at the longer picture. For example, sending the right folks And we want to help Ukraine with the right capacity building, give them the right support, so they can also, let's put it this way, they're already great soldiers. They have great leaders there, but make it even better. So I have to trust with also our military leadership and how this is done. I also don't want to be able to easily make decisions in sending certain arms in certain way, or, for example, signing the Defense Cooperation Agreement allows us a better connection to be able to do more for the defense industry. There's more steps that we need to take here, and Mr. Freeland is also working in that. So how do we make that happen? Because this is not just about the fight, this is about a nation who Russia is trying to destabilize and belittle. But when a nation can't be belittled and their economy is going to do the opposite and grow instead, those are the type of messages that we also need to send. Arms are not just always like, for example, we can send bullets, we can send rifles. From what I was briefed on, we have the right type of arms. But what if we can? This is such a powerful emotional situation. What's going on? That even all of us, I allow the experts to make the decisions. Hence, one of the reasons we sent one of our phenomenal Canadian, Jill Sinclair, to work directly with the Minister of Defense. So not only that we're doing capacity building, we decided that for us to making sure that we have the right knowledge base, that the 5 other nations, we're going to send very senior folks to work with their departments directly, so we have a direct link. And I can assure you, man, when it comes to from the resource side, this is all being looked at by the right military leadership, the right experts, and we'll always be able to do our part. Always.
Thank you, Minister. And now, back to
Thank you, Ursula, for conducting an excellent question and answer period. And just before I get to thanking the Minister, I want to answer some of your questions in a different type of way. In the late 1990s, the Canadian Army sent me off to Ukraine on an advisory liaison mission. Then I got to train the officers of the Ukrainian Peacekeeping Battalion at Annapolis, at the Pearson Peacekeeping School. Those days, we were told very clearly, Ukraine will become a member of NATO, but only after Russia does. And that was the message we were supposed to pass on to the Ukrainians, which in a manner we did. Look at the change. We are not only advising and helping the Ukrainian Polish Peacekeeping Battalion, which still functions, we now have a military combat training message in mission in Yavor. We have Canadian soldiers training Ukrainian military engineers in Canad expeditions. The Minister spoke on a lot of what the other training missions that are done. Take a look at what our government was saying in the late 1990s and what it is saying now, and what you heard the Minister say now about Russia. I think we should keep on doing exactly what we were doing here, putting greater and greater pressure on the Canadian government. But we have to realize this is a democracy. The Minister doesn't answer just to us, although he does a bit of that. He answers to all his voters, and he's got to convince all Canadians that support of Ukraine is important. Not just Canadians, because Canada can do a bit, but really a lot more can be done by all of NATO, all of the EU. And he's got to move the alliance forward. And just think a bit about your history, think about the Second World War. It takes a hell of a long time to mobilize a democracy. But once mobilized, democracies are unstoppable. And I think we have to keep pressure on the Minister to keep up that mental and psychological mobilization of our whole alliance. But now, to a more serious issue.
What are you doing?
We're going to get the Minister a small token of appreciation for coming here this evening. And we decided it would be good to get a book about Corporal Philip Konoval, newly published, Ukrainian, English, and French. We got the book, and as is usual within the Ukraine community, we ran across a minor problem. So we got the book anyway, but we realized the Minister is not going to read it. Now, relax everybody. We walked into the office of the Ukrainian Canadian Congress where Igor hides, and we saw on a shelf a folder with a large photograph and a nice certificate explaining the photograph. And the photograph was of Hill 70, where Philippe Courneval won his Victoria Cross. It shows the memorial cross at the cemetery, and in front of it, standing with the Ukrainian military attaché, is a distinguished gentleman with a long row of ribbons, in civilian clothing, and wearing a turban. So obviously, the minister knows about Philippe Courneval. He has no need to actually read the book. However, we decided that it might be worthwhile to give him the book anyway, and we put the photograph in there, and it says, "On Hill 70, in honor of Corporal Philippe Courneval, VC, the only Ukrainian Victoria Cross recipient," and it shows the minister with the Ukrainian military attaché holding a rather large wreath with Philippe Courneval's name on it. And of course, with thanks for your steadfast support for an independent, democratic Ukraine. We hope that the minister, who doesn't have to read this book because he knows what's there, will simply leave it in his reception area, so whenever the chief of defense staff is
I gotta take this, okay. You know why this is important? You know why, for example? This is not me just going to a ceremony, right? The reason I know this story, the regiment that I commanded was at Hill 70. Two of the other Victoria Cross winners were from my regiment as well. So
The Westminster Regiment.
sorry? No, the British Columbia Regiment.
Yeah.
Yeah. So point being is the when we talk about this direct connection, right? That's why to me this was so powerful as well. I mean, I got to be at the ceremony as Minister of National Defense, representing all units, but the regiment that I commanded, my troops that I commanded, the regiment that I commanded fought alongside, And I was so proud when to know this history because I knew before. Hill 70 is a very important battle honor for us. So when we talk about this relationship, why it's so important to have our voice, this is our relationship that we talk about is far more deeper. I mean, our troops had this relationship together, relied on each other to stay alive. And so I was very proud to be there for that. I just wanted to make sure to pass that on. Okay.
There's just one more thing, like they say in the ads, but there's more. And there's another connection. Philippe Courneval was actually a member of this parish. We can see a copy of his Victoria Cross and his photograph up there. So the parish insisted that we give you a copy of their history.
Oh, very good. Thank you.
And now, the minister will be here for a few minutes more, so if you care to have a chat with him, we'll try and open up the windows and get some air into here.